I see running a business as really building a team that is really deeply empowered. I have incredibly high standards, and I shoot for the moon all the time, and I put these crazy expectations out for everyone. But mostly I look for people who think the same way as I do.
Welcome to The Wedding Biz with Andy Kushner, the show about the global wedding business and your backstage pass to the happily ever after world of professional dream makers.
I gave you my heart on a silver platter, 'cause you made my dreams come true.
So it is so good to sit with both of you, Carley and Anja, during the Engaged Luxury Wedding Business Summit here at Nizuc Resort and Spa in Cancun. So Carley, you are the co-founder of The Knot, a consumer internet company devoted to weddings, pregnancy, and nesting. The Knot revolutionized the wedding industry with up-to-date editorial and a rich local vendor marketplace on the web, best-selling magazines and books, and the #1 mobile wedding app. And your company is now publicly traded and employs hundreds of people. You also advise many startups. You speak on entrepreneurship, digital content, communities, and marketing at conferences around the world, such as this wonderful one. And you've also been a regular lifestyle expert on TV shows such as Today, Kelly, and Oprah. And you are about to appear on How I Built This with Guy Raz, very successful podcasts out there. And Anja, you are the Director of Education and Industry Innovation at The Knot. You are a writer, editor, and brand builder of The Knot, theknot.com also. And you've written and edited several books, including The Knot Wedding Binder, which is a top-selling wedding book, and The Knot Book of Lists. And about to come out is yours truly, The Knot's Guide to Personalizing Your Wedding, which I urge everybody to get. I know it's going to be amazing. And you grew the Knot audience tremendously by millions. And as a source for wedding trends, you've appeared on several major TV programs. So, Carley, yes, I know. This is so impressive. I'm like, both of you. I'm
Good job.
My God.
A mouthful.
This is like a power meeting right here. So, Carley, at the Engage Summit in June of 17 in the Grand Cayman, you told a fascinating story about your upbringing and trajectory that led to the success you've had with The Knot. I'm not going to ask for that again, but if you could give just a brief summary, basically, because it really was fascinating what you've been through.
Well, I think the most important irony of the role I currently play in the wedding world is that I did not grow up a girl believing that I was going to get married at all. In fact, I was sort of anti-wedding because I grew up with divorced parents and really didn't fantasize about my wedding day for 1 second until I fell madly in love with a guy named David Liu, who is my co-founder of The Knot. Yeah. And suddenly the entire concept of weddings made sense to me, but I felt a little alienated, I guess, by it because I was planning a wedding kind of quickly and I was marrying a Chinese guy and all of our parents and family was all so messy. So we had this very quick, very fun wedding that we planned in just a few weeks and sort of never expected to set foot.
You of all people.
That's why I say it's crazy. But I sort of ran quickly away from the wedding world, hoping to never set foot in it again. What I realized in planning this wedding is that the wedding world was pretty broken, that it really didn't reflect what I saw was the changing mindset of at the time we were Gen Xers. We wanted to have fun at our weddings. We wanted to take control of our weddings. We wanted them to be fashion forward. And that isn't what that world was about. It was about perfect cookie cutter weddings that did not break any rules. And I'm a rule breaker by nature. I show a picture at times in my presentation of me as a bridesmaid. I was the world's worst bridesmaid. And, by all estimates, I was actually the world's worst bride too. So,
but why?
Just because I didn't follow any rules. And I think I threw weddings that made people, my wedding was kind of awkward and uncomfortable and it was too hot and no one knew where they were going. It was a total disaster. I had fun.
But you're saying it with a smile.
It was a great, everyone said, well, it's fitting of you. I think most importantly, the issue was that the world of weddings just wasn't responding to who people were that I knew. I was in the Lower East Side of New York City. All of my friends were artists and music people and magazine people. And we all looked at the world and were never going to touch one of those wedding magazines. Those are for those 17-year-old doe-eyed girls that don't work and plan their wedding with their moms who've been dreaming about this their entire lives. And that's just not who we were and not what we saw in the world around us. And so when we launched The Knot, it was largely because we saw the internet and we thought, wow, this technology is going to change so many things.
This is when? Just
This
so I
is
can
in
have
1996. So I got
Okay.
married in 1993.
Okay.
Summer of 1993, and started a digital media company doing like the sort of earliest forms of digital production online, content creation. I'd worked in magazines. That's the world I knew. And in 1996, when we saw that the internet was going to be something, we thought, you know what's really going to change with this? Weddings. And it could fundamentally change the industry. It could take it from being a disaggregated industry that the businesses don't know how to talk to each other and they don't know how to talk to consumers efficiently. It was a industry that was just sort of like outdated because it had to be so limited in the amount of information that it could offer at any given point in time.
Yeah.
And it was also going to help people do business in a very different way. But it was really, really early. And most of the people in the wedding world didn't even have computers yet.
Well, yeah, and I know that you also faced a really uphill battle, which I'm going to want to come back to in a few minutes too, in terms of just the fearlessness and what it took, the courage to be able to, go against the grain like that, be an innovator. Anja, I wanted to ask you also to catch us up to this point. I believe you started as a wedding coordinator, right, at a venue?
Well, that was my job in college. That was like
Well,
to
hey,
pay
it
the
counts.
bills. Right. So I worked at a weddings. Basically,
She had more experience than I did starting.
well, every weekend in college, the way I got through was to work at this weddings venue, right? So I saw like hundreds of cookie cutter
Interesting.
weddings.
And when was this, to put that in context too?
It was like early aughts, right? So, I graduated in 01. I'm at the edge. I'm a millennial technically.
Right. Yeah, right.
She's a Gen X millennial.
I'm a
kid.
Gen X. I'm a blend. So so I worked weddings in college and I saw these things and literally I had zero money, zero contacts.
Yeah.
No one in my family lived in New York, nor they thought it was basically another country. And so my goal as a University of Kansas journalism kid was to get to New York City and to work at a magazine at the
Just
time.
any particular?
No, I wanted to work at I was pretty much any magazine would have done at the time.
Just wanted to get into the industry.
I was dreaming big, right?
Yeah.
But no, it was a female-focused magazine, right? So I had these thoughts. But I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I have zero knowledge of anything. But I work at this weddings place, and I have a journalism degree, almost. So I guess I'll work for a weddings magazine. And then the next thought was like, which magazine? Well, there's no other, there's literally zero question in my mind that it would be The Knot. I had no idea that The Knot was like teeny tiny. I didn't know that The Knot meant, working for The Knot meant probably base salary, probably in not the cool part of New York, not in the fancy midtown.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of those things. What I knew living there was a brand that did the wedding thing that was my sort of path. That was my way of getting there that spoke to me. There was a bride on the cover with and her groom with cons on, and that was just so
She
different.
means Converse for people who can't translate the cons.
Or like me. Thank you. I appreciate that on behalf of my generation.
Yeah, no. So I literally it was a brand match made in heaven, and I did everything in my power to get there. Still there.
And well, you are an executive now. That's quite a career path.
Yeah.
Right? And what were some of your responsibilities in the very beginning?
I was the copy editor.
Okay.
So I was the only copy editor. I have no idea how I was put in charge. No, I do. It was the only job open. So I was like, yep. And so I copy edited, right? So grammar and punctuation, made sure nothing was misspelled on the cover of the magazine and everything that went out the door. But that also meant that I read every single piece of content that came from every department. We were smaller at the time. So I read every press release, every piece of marketing material, and of course, every single article, and Ask Carley, which were our etiquette Q&As, which really was the foundation to, my editorial career there.
Huh. Well, and I know that, Carley, you built this major business, and I know that you're passionate about, you've talked a lot about empowering women in business, female entrepreneurs, and then eventually through your career here, you needed to make this transition. So I know that you needed to train, mentor, and empower others, including Anja. Can you just tell me something about how this all went, for both of you along the way? Why are you laughing? Oh, now I feel like a story's about to come on.
No, it's just...
I see running a business as really building a team that is really deeply empowered. I have incredibly high standards, and I shoot for the moon all the time, and I put these crazy expectations out for everyone. But mostly I look for people who think the same way as I do, because then there's not really any conflict. And if I hook one of those incredible, shiny, lovely fish who thinks the same way I do, which is Anja, I saw the second she walked in the door, I'm like, oh, she thinks like I do. She thinks something could always be better, that we could always strive harder, we can always reach. She was fearless.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm not sure how to do this job, but I will do it and I will learn and I will do it as perfectly as possible. And that type of person is incredibly important in a startup environment because you need people who are not afraid, who will run forward as fast as they can. You give them more and more responsibility because they take it on, and you know they'll turn around and ask questions when they have them, but otherwise they'll run because you trust them. And trust, I think, is one of the most critical pieces of glue plus rocket fuel that can grow a company. And ours was growing very quickly. We went public in only 3 years after launching. We then, grew multifold. So, 7 people, 70 people, 170 people. We actually teach a class at Columbia on managing growth because the exponential growth and trying to figure out how to do that with people, around you who you barely even understand what their job descriptions are. You don't have time to write them. So what you're really trying to do is look for people who have the kind of right psychological fit and are smart people. And whether or not they have the exact right set of experience or many years of experience was never what we looked for or I looked for in my team. I was just as happy to have a woman right out of college who had my shared mindset, and happier, honestly, because she was game. She had a lot of energy, and she was willing not to doubt herself. And that was critical. And so when Anja and I became up, she was my partner in crime and in the team, I think that almost people were a little jealous of our relationship over the years because it was a sort of an instant simpatico. And I could trust her with anything. And she always said yes. And I hope I never abused that relationship. It was a really, really powerful one for me to help us grow. And I'm so appreciative that you have been so loyal to this day and always do whatever the new, incarnation we think is necessary. So even transitioning from being on the hardcore editorial side, there was a certain point at which we felt like, wow, Anja, we can actually, other people can probably do this stuff, even though you do it brilliantly. Could you come help us really educate and empower our members of the industry? And that was a huge transition. But if you have a relationship you trust in your space and someone you mentor, then, they come along with you for the ride. At least that's my version of the story.
Well, no. And also as the entrepreneur, earlier you're talking about managing growth, and when a company grows too fast, that really could just crush it all. If the company's not able to handle that. So I'm listening to the way that you empowered Anja, and I'm sure your entire team. But you also talked this. I think this morning, yesterday at Engage, you talked about this aspect of fearlessness and self-belief, which is such a core requirement, or at least it's a big part of your personality. And from what I hear, also you, Anja, right? So it seems to me that both of you, when you say someone thinks like you, it's also just this out of the box thinking, right? Which is the foundation for innovation, which is how I view both of you and the company. How was that for you, Anja? Walking into an environment like this, it must have, you came right out of college, you're saying, right? Here's
the thing. I had nothing to lose. I literally had nothing to lose. I had everything to gain. And so the goal for myself was, okay, you made it. You got it you're at a publication now. Great. Now what? And I made 2 rules for myself. If I stop learning and I stop having any fun, I'm going to move on. I'll go find something else to do. That has never happened. Has literally never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. In over a decade. Yeah.
Over a decade. And also, Carley, you were talking about how when you first started the Knot, so I assume that when you came in, you were all dealing with all this at the same time, that investors thought it was a bad idea, right? Talk about the courage and, like you say, self-belief. How can you say something about that? That is something so many of us face.
Well, there was a lack of knowledge about the power of the wedding industry. In fact, when we went out to go pitch our initial investment, and then even when we went to go public, it took a lot of education to have people understand that, at the time it was a $72 billion industry, which is actually larger than the toy industry in America. And part of it was having a female-focused company when most of the investment community are men.
Right.
There was just simply a lack of understanding of how much actual information was required and how engaged a customer could be with a media company and how that could be translated into a powerful business opportunity. And we kind of had nothing to lose. We were just out of college ourselves when we started it. 2 years, we had our own business, but a lot of it was around the idea of this is going to be big and this is going to be new, and why not us? But a lot of it was about our partnership. There were 4 of us who founded The Knot, and we had a very interesting relationship wherein when anyone else started to get doubtful, the 3 other people would immediately pull them up and out of any questioning they had. And it became like a cult amongst us almost, that no one would ever have any doubt after a while, and we would just power through. But was with a lot of humor, actually. We knew we were taking big risks, and it was one of the most important stories of the founding of our company is, in fact, when we went out and told AOL, who was our financer, who was giving us, $1.3 million to found the company, was that we said we want to call it The Knot. And they were like, the what? Is that a tie? That sounds like a tie. Maybe it's a sailing site, a tie company.
Right.
And we said, no, it's The Knot, like tie the knot. It's something that once you've heard, you'll never forget. And it sounds fun and different and like a club and edgy, and it has attitude. And that's what we want to call the company. And we're like, well, no one's going to know what that is. We don't think you should call it that. You should call it Weddings Online.
They said this to you?
Yes, Weddings Online. And I was like, as compelling a name as Weddings Online is, we don't think it's the appropriate name for this because we won't always be online. We're also going to have magazines and television shows and books. And they truly looked at us like we were a bunch of kids filled with like extraordinary hubris, like you guys don't know what you're doing. And it was a moment we were literally at a funding conference and they said, we're not going to fund you if you call it that. And the 4 of us is in Arizona, and the 4 of us were like behind a curtain somewhere. All I can remember is that we were in the dark behind a curtain, and we were supposed to sign the papers that day. And they were like, we're not going to fund you if you don't call it, Weddings Online. And we were like, well, should we just, agree and then later argue, or, really just trying to decide what to do? And then we actually just looked at each other and we're like, well, we won't do it unless they let us call it The Knot.
This is in the moment?
This is in the moment. We're like back behind a curtain. And it was actually one of my most proud moments of my partners as well, because it really was this 4 people who were completely fearless and or completely clueless. But the combination was fantastic because we walked back out and said, we will call it The Knot. And you don't fund us if you don't want to, but it won't be successful if we don't call it that name.
Were you anxious and nervous while you were saying this?
Am I allowed to say shitting my pants? No. No, I mean, of course, heart beating, sweaty palms. We're kids. Yeah. We have no jobs.
Right.
If this isn't funded, this is a ton of money. Yeah. I mean, to start the whole funding process over again, there weren't a lot of funders at the time. It was hard enough to convince these people who thought it was sort of a mediocre idea. We'd already knocked on all the other doors. But it just felt like, why not? We have nothing to lose. It's truly something we believe in. We had enough we had no market research. All I had is the funny laugh that I felt when I said the name. And when people I knew heard it and I told them, they're like, that's a funny name. That's good. that really was what you have to go on sometimes. And it truly was a defining moment in our company. We would not have been as successful because it was something that felt like such a secret that you had to tell somebody else about. This is a thing, it's called The Knot. Right. You'll never find it because it's not called like Weddings Online. Yeah. And that was critical. It became a secret society that people wanted to be a part of and wanted to be the first to talk about. And the exponential viral growth just by people sharing it via email or their other friends on AOL or even in the press was really important to our growth because we never bought a one page of advertising.
Wow. Yeah. I would say in the beginning that, for brides that, it was like they are part of this kind of secret society in a way too, right? What a great branding move. You were there too, Anja, at the time when this came out? No, you heard this story.
Probably 10 years in, right? So yeah, a little less than 10 years.
Yeah. Wow. I also want to talk about how things have changed, since then. I know, Carley, you have an interracial marriage, which back at the time, I can't imagine what you and your husband had to face. Whereas today, we see I don't know if it's exactly acceptance. It sure seems to be getting much closer, or it is happening with interracial marriages and gay marriages. And, it's almost like anything goes. I mean, how have you felt about that? How does that go for you?
I think Anja would agree that I'm pretty clear from the beginning that there were 3 or 4 key features of our brand values that we were going to live and die by. One of them is that we were going to treat our customers like they were really intelligent people. We were going to be honest with them and establish trust by sharing a tremendous amount of true insider detailed information. We were never going to sell them anything we didn't believe in. And we weren't doing exposés about the industry. We were just trying to establish a real trust about what it took to do each of the things in wedding. A second thing was that we had a lot of style. We were incredibly focused on being very fashion forward. We hired the best stylists who shot for the best magazine, the best photographers. And it was an important piece of our values to be fashion forward. A sense of humor was really critical.
Well,
we were like, this should be much more fun. I mean, we were like, we don't want to do it if it's not fun.
Yeah.
And making sure that was being added to events. But the other real pillar of our brand value was inclusivity. We having been married to a person of color, really understanding that it was an underserved sector of the American wedding market and brides and grooms, I just felt like it was unfair not to be acknowledging all these people. They should be able to. You should be able to look in a magazine and see yourself.
Yeah.
And whether. And that extended for us, obviously, to whether people were having, at the time, we had to call them commitment ceremonies because they were not legal.
I forgot. That's right.
But we covered it from the very beginning, and we treated all members of our community with equal importance. We did wedding content for every single solitary religion that we could find.
We did.
And we had real standards. We had, quotas in our magazine. Like, I will not publish a magazine that is all white people. I just won't.
Yeah.
Like, this does not reflect our society or our community, and we want everyone to have a seat on our bus. It was very much what the Knot was about. And yes, I mean, if I look around me now, it reflects more like what New York was. Usually it was like New York that had the interracial weddings.
That's right.
And now all around the country.
Yeah.
I was, sometimes we joke because we're like, now everybody's interracial. Do we have any? It's hard to find always the perfect selection of weddings that you want to have in a magazine, for example. And it was important for us to fight for marriage equality. And it has been great to be able to be, getting in trouble on AOL for having commitment ceremony content.
What do you mean?
In the early days.
They came out and said something to you?
Well, to be talking about it as marriage, we would get bad feedback from members of the community, politically sensitive issues, and to be taking that heat on one side, and to be 20 years later having our number one marketing event of the year being marrying a lesbian couple is it's one of the things we're very proud of, was to have stood for those values, come thick or thin, and believe me, sometimes it was very thin.
Yeah. And Anja, I want to ask too. We're talking about the change, in the ways that you just described, Carley, but also, and I see it too on the music business side of what I do, what couples want seems to be changing just endlessly. I don't know. It seemed to me like it was kind of locked in and something would change, right? There'd be a fad or a trend or something. But it seems like it's endlessly changing, and you're right there in the thick of it with what you do. How do you view that, and how do you deal with this ever constant evolving that's happening with couples they want?
Well, I think that couples being more diverse and being from more parts of the country, right? Living in different places, everyone moves away at this point, right? They don't even live near their parents.
Yeah.
They've come accustomed to taking on new traditions, like their friends of their family, right? So they're sort of like, it's like you're ingesting all of these like other cultures all around you when you do something like that. And so when it comes to your wedding today, I mean, obviously the possibilities are endless. You can pretty much do whatever you want. But ultimately it's about putting your own personal brand out there. That's really what the wedding is, right? It's like our unique stamp of, this is my big moment to make sure that my friends and my family understand like who it is that we are as a unit. Obviously we've been living together, so that's not a thing. It's not what it used to be, right? This is my moment. And so I think that the reason it feels like it's just endless is because we're so mobile now, and we just have access to all of this, but more so we're influenced by different people and different cultures and traditions more than we ever have been before.
Yeah. And I love how, again, in my part of the business in music, to me, it's sometimes it gets a little bit interesting, in terms of what a couple expresses. And yet I need to reflect their personality into what we do. And I actually end up embracing it, right? I love, what looks like maybe a challenge at first, and to me, this is what makes it so creative. I imagine you must see that all the time.
I mean, it's about telling the couple's story, right?
Yeah.
And it used to be, right, you get engaged and you and your mom and the lady at the church would sit down and tell you what was what, right? And then, the knot comes out and it's like, oh, now that you're in a message board community with these other women that live across the country. And now you're connecting in endless ways, right? And the knot is kind of helping you connect those dots and still empower you to do what you want and to do it your way.
I just think that one of the things that we had established very early on, which is what made us different, is the only rule for weddings in our book is that you're true to yourself. That you don't try to be somebody you are not, because everyone there, you can be multiple facets of yourself, but we want everyone to walk away thinking wow, that was really such an amazing expression of who this couple is.
Yes.
And that was really the tradition that we, I think, set in motion, that it's not your mother's wedding.
Right.
It's your wedding.
Yeah.
And that you needed to use, almost in some ways, use it to help define yourself as a couple and for the world around you, and let them kind of take part in creating this in your image, whether it was letting it be more personal by having people tell stories, or whether it was, the whole idea of displaying photos. I mean, all of these things have evolved over the course of the past, 15 years, all of these very personal wedding traditions. And I think we also, we encouraged listening. We encourage the vendors, all the professionals in the industry, to listen more to their customers and not tell things to them, because that is what this generation, it was what I think the rise in Gen X was, but definitely millennials, is they want it to be an equal conversation. They want their thoughts heard.
Yeah.
And that was an important piece of what we did. We said, well, we're not really the experts. Look at my wedding. I'm by no means a wedding expert. What I am is someone who can expertly connect you with one another to share. I can match you. Did you have a Scottish-Japanese wedding? Well, heck, there's another girl across the country whose sister had a Scottish-Japanese wedding in Japan. You two should share ideas. And that idea of, that's the sort of network effect that the internet was, that we really set in motion. And that empowered couples to think creatively because they could see more. It was really democratizing all of the access to ideas. Whereas before you had, 30 pages in a magazine of content and those were your ideas, or maybe in a book. But the idea to have an unlimited access to ideas was really novel. And it made people feel much more open because they could see that freedom reflected successfully in what other people did. And we basically, we would get emails all the time. It's I told my mom that the knot said it was okay. And that was our role, was to be the advocate for personal expression.
Oh, I think we've solved a lot of arguments at home across the country.
It's the knot.
But I would say that the number one compliment a couple can receive today is that wedding was so you.
You know what? This is what you're both making me think of. It was Colin Cowie. He was on the show also, and he said that this is really the first expression of style of the couple is through their experience of their wedding. I thought that was such a fascinating way to do it, and that's exactly what we're talking about here, right? And also the process. It's interesting. I'm kind of finding there's a thread that ties, everyone I'm talking to on the show together, particularly with the planners and the designers, is that working with the couple, the way we all are talking about, is actually, it becomes a process in of itself, right? Planning this wedding, whereas before, like we're talking about, people were handed a cookie cutter, timeline, and you're going to do the cake, you're going to do this, it's going to be that. And now with all this involvement, which you are very much helping to facilitate with all this information, is allowing people to have this, possibly year-long experience along the way, right? And that's part of the engagement that you have with your brides, through your online and all of that, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And and now today, that's why, we have what we just launched, which is the Ultimate Wedding Planner, right? So it connects all those dots for you, and it starts with a quiz, or we're showing you photos. Do you like this? Do you like that? And we're sort of helping them, illustrate or articulate their styles and things. And then they're actually able to automatically share that with the folks that they're shopping around. So now as a venue owner, I understand what you mean by boho romantic with a little rustic botanical thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like those things are all in there. And actually, earlier today, I was going through some of the data that these guys are writing in. So our couples are actually also, in addition to the labels of rustic or those types of things, they're also able to write out like, these are the things I want for my wedding. And I mean, obviously there's like hundreds of thousands of descriptions in there. And I just was reading through just to kind of get a sense as to what they are. And there is just, no two people are alike, right? Like,
right.
It's like, it's amazing. It's incredible. It's like, it's like, I want a popcorn bar and a bonfire and dog friendly, or I need a place for granny to sit, but a badass party. And like, it's awesome to read. It's so human.
Yeah, no, it sounds wonderful. And I know too that the company is now really taking these couples from being married through pregnancy. I mean, you call it weddings, pregnancy, and nesting. Mm-hmm. I love that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, when we had been running the Knot for 10 years, we would get emails. I would get emails consistently, 4 and 5 times a week saying, hi, so you really helped me with planning my wedding, but what about this whole newlywed thing? Like, we have no idea what we're doing. Would you mind making us a message board so we can keep talking to each other, all of the brides who have met on the Knot and are now trying to figure out what it means to be married? And also, do you have any advice on buying dishwashers or renovating this house we bought or this entire other set of life? When we suddenly realized there's 300 decisions you have to make when planning your wedding. There's another 300 decisions that you have to make when you're actually like becoming a grown up and buying insurance and setting up home and learning how to negotiate which type of toothpaste you're going to buy. Cause one was a Crest and the other was a Colgate. I mean, you
just have both.
That's right.
Because
you could have
way
both.
It goes.
And so we really have always been one of the core values of our company is around listening. And so, first we were like, we don't have time to do anything related to nesting. And then over time, we're like, this is enough requests to realize that there's an untapped need of our audience here, and we should at least do what they're asking, which wouldn't take much for us, was to build this community for them to at least be sharing and supporting one another. Yeah. And it exploded. Oh. And we realized how much intensity there was in that time and how much advice they needed. And they were giving it to one another, but then we were like, they really need some expert advice here. Like, we're not exactly sure that everything they're sharing with one another couldn't use a little expert layer. Yeah. So ultimately we launched a site to do that. And then it quickly turned into a pregnancy portal because that's what everyone was doing. And we really also felt that we had a particular worldview that was going to be important with pregnancy, very much about the Knot is not about being perfect, but about being personal. And we felt that world of having a trust in yourself could really be helpful on the American pregnancy and parenting scene as well. Yeah. And so we translated the trust we had around planning the most important day of their lives so far to the real most important day of their life when they had a child.
Well, and I'm thinking about both of you married with kids too, right? So what an interesting, situation for you to be living it, breathing it yourselves. This wasn't just strictly a business decision, right? I mean, this is very personal for you.
Well, that was it. We were all growing up and having kids, and we understood personally what the challenges were. We were definitely a company of our own customers. Okay. And we always have had very young people in the company, and we try to always have many new young people there's always enough people in the company that are the average age of an American couple getting married, and to kind of keep that real sensibility, the real connection. And, but as we grew up, yes, we felt like kind of mirroring our audience inside the company really made sense. And it was actually good business as well.
Exactly. I mean, that's why we always hire for diversity. That's why, you don't need a fancy focus group. You could literally talk to the 5, women around you and say, like, what are your friends doing? Oh, I heard your one friend is getting married over in Napa. Like, what's she doing? Who does she hire? What kind of colors? It seems like everyone's doing blush over there. Like, you were just able to do that. And I did. I got, 7 years in, I got married. So,
That must have been interesting being in this business and then you
Hashtag
get
best day
married.
ever. It really was.
No, it really was
really
an
was.
extraordinary wedding. It was a real expression. We felt, sorry to like hijack
that's
your
okay.
wedding.
Talk about my wedding.
I felt, and we would talk about it kind of behind Anja's back, that this was one of the truest expressions of a not wedding ever. The way everything about it, from the fashion sensibility to the spirit of it, to how personal it was extraordinarily beautiful and very personal and very real and not at all what you would kind of fear that a person who lived in a world filled with wedding obsession would have. It was exactly the wedding that we would want to be. We made her I was like, this is the poster child.
Right.
And which made a lot of sense because that's what the early simpatico was. There are people who understand your brand from the moment they walk in the door. You don't have to explain it.
Yeah.
And they are living it and breathing it. And you're a very creative person. Your family's important to you. Like all of those things that make up for a not wedding. Anja's was.
Also as we get
And
ready.
she was really pretty.
I bet. And, as we get ready to close, I also want to ask each of you, I mean, you're talking about your own experience as you're getting married. So your wife, your mothers, your friends, as business women in this career that you have, how do you each balance it? I know that's got to be such a challenge, and I, as a father, I was very present, extremely present. That was very important to me, but I still knew that, my daughter's mother still carried more of it, in a lot of ways. So I wonder how that has been for you, Anja, and then I'd like to hear from you, Carley.
Okay. Well, when I was a young pup at the Knot, Carley was pregnant with her third baby, and I had a role model actually of a fearless founder who was actually having a baby. And then when you came back to work, I remember very, very vividly, there were like meetings, and I'm way, way many years away from being married or having a baby myself. But there she is, like, she's literally breastfeeding, like in a meeting, not to whatever, call you out, but it was
I'll whip it out for you.
It was one of those moments for me. I was really young and it had not on my mind at all to have a baby. I knew I wanted kids eventually, but I think it made quite an impression on me. And so there was just no question as to how that was going to work. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. Of course, my husband is really important to this equation as well.
Of course.
And he and I have like a ridiculously like open and very communicative relationship and we set up structures in advance. We talk a lot. We just talk a lot. But no, there was no question in my mind. I mean, after when Ada was 10 weeks, she and I and Ben went to Scottsdale to a conference and spoke, and every 4 hours he brought her over to me and we did it, that. And I thought to myself, like, Carley does it. I mean, we can do this. We're strong women. We're smart. Like we can totally do this.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, no question in my mind.
Yeah. But that is such a challenge, for a lot of women who I speak to. How was it for you, Carley?
It was completely terrifying to have children and run this startup. It never seemed like there were enough hours in the day. And in fact, I found that if you eliminate sleep, it actually makes it easier.
Yeah, sure.
That only really works for like a year.
Right.
It was very hard. It is hard. And I think that we've always been very honest in our brands and our brand voice. We just tell it like it is. And I would say to everyone, oh, it's really hard, but you can do it. You'll suffer a decent amount. We'll all be there to support each other, but
none of your clothes will fit.
Yeah, none of your clothes will fit.
Yeah, all of the above.
And I think that part of empowering women is letting them know it's okay not to be perfect. Like letting them know it's okay. Like I have a formula in my mind. When the women on my team get pregnant, I know they'll go away, they'll come back, they'll work really hard, they'll like completely trip. 2 months in, they'll be so tired. They've been trying to show how they can like multitask.
Right.
And then like 2 months in, they're going to suddenly be completely exhausted. They're going to have a month where they're just like melting and not really able to function, just calculated in to your coverage plan for them. And it's okay. And that whole year, actually, it's okay to be like not at 100%. That we are all imperfect. Every wedding is imperfect. Every parent is imperfect. Our brand is imperfect. We're all doing the best we can. And that's, I think, why I think a piece of empowerment is saying, stop trying to be so perfect. We'll do the best we can. And honestly, your best you can is probably better than most. And if we all believe that from one another, there's a lot of trust that's in that. And I think once again, we're very loyal to one another. It's very safe.
Yeah.
And I think people perform best in a safe environment.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that as a company, we did that, but as women for one another, I hope that's what we did for one another.
Yeah, and it sounds to me, I would add to the word trust that giving permission, to yourselves
Right.
and also for you, for the people who work for you.
Being entrepreneurial, I wanted everyone in my company to feel entrepreneurial, that they were running their own universe, their own set of goals and dreams and projects. And that includes letting them figure out how to balance their lives. At the Knot, we have an unlimited vacation policy, which really just means
Carley, come on.
take your vacation when you can, however
Yeah.
you can. Like you work till 10 o'clock at night. I'm not going to be like, on Monday, I'm not sure why you weren't here at 9. Like, come and go as you please. Get your work done. Do the best you can contributing. And what I believe is in an environment where there is total trust between the boss lady and the incredible people that work for her, I don't need to keep track of where you are. I don't need to be measuring your hours or making you feel uncomfortable for going out for a doctor's appointment with your child or a dress fitting for your upcoming wedding.
Yeah.
Trust is an important piece of getting the best out of everyone on a team. And there are a lot of ways to do that as a company, but that's one of them.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's interesting. My employees, for the most part, work virtually, and I had a friend who said to me, well, how do you know, that what if they're taking 6 hours on Friday? And I actually said, they could work 2 hours on a Friday as long as they're getting the job done. And if anything, I feel like they work even harder because they've been empowered in that way. I love it.
Empowerment's where it's at.
Well, one last question for both of you. Anja, I guess I'll put this on you first.
All right, bring it on.
This is a good one. How do you define success?
I don't think I have that definition at the ready. Honestly, I don't. It feels like sort of an infinite path toward this thing. And that may be something that's, maybe will mature and change for me and I'll have this definition of what success is.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's just the better version of myself and my family and the world around me.
Oh, I think actually that's a beautiful answer. I think that's it right there. I love that. No, I love that.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Carley, what about for you?
You'd think I would have spent the time while Anja was loving her answer, thinking of mine. I don't think about the world that way. It's very funny. I mean, I think that's maybe one of the things we saw in each other or saw as a team. I mean, it's easy to say because I've been successful that I don't know what success, never really thought about
Well,
success,
that would be
but I
interesting
think-
to hear at this point, given the level of success you've had. It would be interesting for you. What is it now?
I think that the thing I strive for now more than anything else is being able to be 100% present. It's a different kind of success, obviously, where, we had great achievements over the years, extraordinary achievements, but it isn't now being more grown up. Like I wanted to make sure, and I really do feel connected to people around me, but I really want to be able to be focused on whoever I'm with. And I think for a good portion of my career, I was multitasking in the back of my mind to such an extent. I'm not sure how present I was in anything I was doing at any given time. And I think it might have been critical to get it all done. But I think right now, a real sense of success would be able to really be seeing everyone around me, really being present in all of my relationships.
Yeah.
So it definitely it's shifted, and it's really lovely for me now because I don't have to go to work every day, so that's pretty much super successful. I built myself out of a job, by choice, which is awesome. But I don't think I really feel successful until all the people that I have brought up around me get what they need out of making their lives and, sending Ada out of college, and whether it's some, satisfaction in the job that they have, some sense of achievement. The community that we have built is very important to me, and everyone feeling decently happy and having enough money to put awesome food on their table and take a vacation. I feel the same way about the vendors in our wedding community or the brides. I just want everyone to get a pretty good version of what they hope for and create a nice balance between all of that. that would make me feel successful.
Yeah, I love it. And I would summarize what both of you said basically into what you're both
Can you
saying.
put that into better words for us?
Well,
for our next
no,
interview?
I'm
distilling that down.
No, I
for
love
us.
it. No, but what I'm getting is that, it's all about connecting. It's all about connecting with those around us, people we love, and connecting, with our clients and readership and all of that. And then which also kind of relates to being in the moment. How can you connect if you're not in the moment?
Right.
Like truly connect. So I love that. Well, I mean,
real relationships.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to like real relationships. And I thank you for making this conversation happen. It's really been lovely. And you're really great at what you do. So thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, Carley and Anja. I really appreciate it. I mean, clearly both of you are just completely being yourselves here on the microphones. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This has been The Wedding Biz with Andy Kushner. You can find us at theweddingbiz.com and on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Wedding Biz Show.
I gave you my heart.
If you want to support the show, we'd be grateful if you shared it with colleagues, friends, and family. We'd also appreciate your review wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
It'll never shatter, no matter what we go through. I gave my heart to you. I gave you my heart on a silver platter, 'cause you made